Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to be talking about that part of making yourself more successful. You know, we talk about branding, we talk about websites, we talk about how to network, all of those various things. But if we're not right in our hearts and in our souls and in whatever you want to call all of that, it's not going to matter what we do for business. And so I love it when we get to speak with guests who are really going to allow us to focus on that. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Alison Kay to our program today. Welcome, Dr. Kay. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. I'm happy to be here. Excited to see what we do.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this because we're going to have so much fun today.
Indeed.
So Alison J, PhD, is a multiple-time #1 international best-selling author, including her latest book, The Dragon Master Creatrix, Conversations with a Female Spiritual Teacher for These New Times, which was released in January of 2021. Dr. Kay is an award-winning master mind-body energy medicine facilitator and teacher for more than 25 years, a world traveler who lived and worked at an international school in Asia for 10 years, while also performing energy medicine and holistic wellness coaching sessions for clients on the side there and worldwide as she continued to study at the source, the subtle energy system and consciousness. During her experience in Asia, Dr. Kay completed her PhD as a holistic life coach. She continued fiercely studying Buddhism and Buddhist meditation, while also learning and eventually teaching Chi Gong and receiving traditional Chinese and other Asian holistic treatments many times per week. Prior to returning home, she went to India and became a Yoga Alliance certified yoga and meditation teacher. All this took place while she was both an administrator and classroom teacher, teaching English literature, AP psychology, and of course, she created global psychology that combines Eastern and Western psychological methodologies. The vibrational upgrade system was created by Dr. Kay after spending these years in Asia studying subtle energy. Her system presents an intersection of the mind, body, and spirit applied to cultivating vitality, health, longevity, and overall well-being that leads to reaching one's fullest potential. See, that's why we're talking about this. During her speaker engagement, she consistently awes her audiences with the completeness and accuracy from which they awaken and recognize their own physical, emotional, mental, and life challenges, having a direct, clear correlation to a specific chakra or two. Oh my gosh, there's even more to your bio, including all sorts of absolutely fabulous information, which is on your website. We'll just tell people to go there. So, Dr. Kay, I mean, this really is fabulous to have you. One of the things that I think people are always very interested in, especially for women who are business owners, they want to know how you got to where you are today. And so how did you discover that this is your passion in life?
You know, I understand why you said what you said about the bio, because that's not the typical one that gets sent nor read to podcast show hosts. So nonetheless, it totally serves what we're going to be talking about today, that you got that version. So hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Alison J. K. J is my middle initial because on Amazon there's an Alison Kay who does not write about what I write about. So I started like just tromping through the woods as a tween with my older brother and under 10 years old. Every day after school, we grew up outside of Boston in the suburbs, a lot of rural land around us at the time. And I always, like, he would go in front of me as boys do, and he'd jump on the dead branches and break them, you know, with the playfulness that boys have. And I would just feel connected to everything. Like I'd see the critters on top of the creeks and just, it was always this open, expansive energy I felt. And so then I'm in my later teen years and I started journal writing, and it wasn't so much as Dear Diary. It was more, I realized later once I began to meditate, and at age, I think it was 20 or 21, that I was actually learning how to connect in with that intuitive voice. So my mom, like around age 13-ish, 14-ish, said, Alison, you're really good with people. You have this special ability to understand people. You might want to consider psychology. Felt right. So I went in, and third semester into my psych major, I was horrified, basically, because they were not answering the basic question I had, was how do we be the happiest, most thriving versions of ourselves here? And they were focused on hardwiring, proving themselves as science, and applying it to, industrial management, HR. So I left, and then I studied some other stuff, ending up with a major in English Lit and creative writing, moved to San Francisco to go for my master's, synchronistically had a job offer. I was waiting tables while I was waiting for my master's program to start. But I synchronistically, out of the blue, had a job offer to go work with a really strategic organization that was electing folks to the California State Assembly in Congress, as well as federal level, not just who would not just who would vote yes on environmentally protective legislation, but who would actually write it. So I hit my stride real quickly, moved up in the ranks real quickly. Because of the success the management was observing ahead above me, they were putting me in these really tight races that were really important in California. So I helped get the first Latina woman elected to the California State Assembly, and she later wrote the legislation that saved the last bit of green space in the LA basin. And then, as they were putting me in the tightest race for the general elections, it was in the Sierra Nevadas, a developer versus a person who was into conservation. I had to learn a way to manage the stress, because with that increase. So I had, by the way, in college freshman year, taken as an elective first semester yoga, second semester personal training. Both, I'm a personal trainer too, certified personal trainer, as well as that yoga teacher that you mentioned. So I had already had exposure. And so anyway, I was walking through a bookstore in San Francisco, and this lavender book fell off the shelf. It was kind of like it leapt off the shelf, landed at my feet. And if I grew up cherishing books, so I'm not going to step on it. So I picked it up. It was about meditation. And from a book, I learned, that was my first meditation teacher. And I took to that so naturally that I had the hubris to begin teaching it to adults within a couple of years after learning it myself. So the election season 92 dies down, and I go overseas celebrating and backpacking and living in different places for a month at a time, and come back. And I actually go for my master's in public administration, focused on public policy that's environmentally protective policy. So I graduate with my master's, and as I'm graduating, I'm not going to go into that, but as I'm graduating, I learned my first energy medicine modality. Now, I had been teaching meditation to adults in the local community out of a community center, community learning education center. So I graduate, I go for the job placement, and I'm asking the question, how can I affect more change inside the system or outside? And so I'm letting both show me, like I'm going for both inside and outside the system, and doors aren't opening in a way that I was used to. And so I did that evaluation, that I stepped back and asked, what am I being shown here? And I got that, Alison, if you want to affect change, do it one consciousness at a time. The market is not ready yet. The fossil fuels are still too heavily a part of the market. That was in 97. So I relied on my bachelor's and went into the classroom and did classroom teaching, and then had the side gig of the energy medicine sessions in holistic health and wellness. Fast forward 2.5 years. So I'm teaching, like when boys were starting to get diagnosed with ADD, I did with a male colleague of mine, a club to help the boys, where I was teaching them meditation. I was taking them outside and showing them in a Chi Gong way. I hadn't yet got certified to teach Chi Gong, but I was already doing it myself, how to connect in with the greater field. So I walked by a bush and a tree, and I showed them the breeze that started by my standing there, and I showed them how to do that. And then they got taken out of their thoughts and realized there was something much bigger around
Right.
them.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it was beautiful. So I was still working with this stuff even within the school system, and I won't go into that either. So 2.5 years fast forward, I'm on a Saturday morning and it's pre-digital banking. So I'm balancing my checkbook. I'm not digging what I saw. I had already lived outside the country, even as in high school, as an exchange student, besides what I've already said. So I knew I wanted a sense of adventure and fun and abundance.
Mhm.
And it was too tight and I wasn't okay with it. And at the same time, it was either that same Saturday or within a week, I was in a session with a client in a package of 10 sessions. She was on like number 4, and we were both really pleased with the results we were getting. My hands are over her womb.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, how can I get even more robust results for my clients? So things, synchronicity comes in within a month's time, and I learned about the international school system. So I did what I had to do, threw in the resume, and got the flights to where I had to go, flying in with all the different international school principals or school heads, and then all the other candidates. Had interviews all over the world in different hotel rooms throughout the weekend, got a bunch of job offers, and chose Taiwan because they're still able to practice the traditional Chinese principles and philosophies different than the mainland. And because I understood that both India and Taiwan are the seats of not only who understands how subtle energy and consciousness works, but they're still operating from it today. Whereas we're not in the West. That all went underground into the secret societies. And we became separate, church and state. And so, yeah, I continued to do the energy medicine sessions and holistic health and wellness along the side. You read that stuff in my bio. So 10 years in, I'm now coming back to the States, having written my first book, What If There's Nothing Wrong? That started as my dissertation. But I got taken down this path, Deb and listeners, that I didn't expect. And I opened up to it. And it became like a 300 something page book that's actually a text. Because the bottom line I was realizing was, this is, now keep in mind, 10 years immersed in the Asian culture. I traveled all over while I was there in the Chinese New Year breaks, came back to the States in the summer. But immersed in their system. I mean, I wasn't taking part of my contract was housing was provided. I didn't live in that housing. I said, no, let me take the stipend and immerse myself downtown with the locals so I could learn as much as possible. And I realized if we understood in the West, particularly in America, how subtle energy and consciousness works, we would have so much more thriving and so much less suffering. And if we valued the invisible more, not just from the church organized religion perspective, and we understood it, how it worked, we would have. So if you think of the title of the book, What If There's Nothing Wrong? And you think of my background in psych, the psych diagnostic text is the largest canon in all of the medical training because of the ridiculous amount of diagnoses. And in Buddhism, we're like, there's states of mind, but it's not considered enduring, and you have to diagnose and then medicate for the rest of one's life. It's a state of mind. And then you're given the tools with how to work with that. Like if you are gray, dull, lifeless thoughts, there's a way to work with those. If there's like hyper restlessness, that has a state that it's called in Sanskrit too. You learn how to shift out of that. So I just find like we tune our cars up. We
don't tune ourselves up.
I know. So, and we're in these times now where really, and I'll go into this later, but the bottom line is the spiritual and the material are merging in these times, and understanding that the spiritual doesn't mean organized religion, but an everyday life, the invisible that is feeding our oxygen called vital life force. And it's behind all of life. Like living from that bigger perspective, it actually, you don't have to go make things happen. If your energy system is attuned correctly, and I mean beyond your thoughts only, if your energy system is attuned correctly, and I do this in my programs, particularly my signature program, you can have your field broadcasting in a way that helps attract and magnetize, and you are receptive enough to receive that what you're desiring. So there's less making it happen and forcing and efforting. So I'm not about anything that, like, even when people come in and they're really into the spiritual path and they want to know about past life information, I can do that, and I do that, but I only provide it in order to help them thrive today. Like just this week, one of my masterminders who's training to become a vibrational upgrade practitioner, she told me these 2 titles that she's reading. And I'm like, okay, that's all well and good. But how does that help you here now thrive in your mind and body and find relationships? So there you go.
I love it. And you said something that I had to stop and write down because I wanted to make sure that I asked about it. And that was the intuitive voice. And, I every day, come across, whether it's in person or reading somebody's post or something where they're saying, it doesn't feel like what I should be doing. I've got this job, I've got this career, I've got this life, but it doesn't feel right. And I find it fascinating because, we've got all these discussions going on of the post-COVID, people are leaving their jobs because, they weren't happy, they weren't satisfied. And that's true, but I think it's a totally different layer or level. They're not doing what they should be doing. And we ignore that internal voice because we think, well, we have to make money. We have to do this. We have to live up to everybody else's expectations. And as you said, if we actually paid attention to that internal, that intuitive voice, everything would work out for the better, no matter what.
Amen.
No, you're supposed to say more.
So I noticed when I came back to the States, like around like maybe 2013, 15, people were talking about be your authentic self. And I thought that was,
to me, that is one of those hooey expressions, right?
Yeah.
Authenticity. Ugh.
Well, you know what it is what you just described, everything you just said, you basically showed the separation that we are conditioned, that we don't even realize we have between the spiritual and material, or between the internal and the external. And being removed for a decade at a time really was able, because of the work that I was already doing on myself, I was really able to peel back even deeper levels of conditioning from being an American born and raised. And it was fascinating. So let me speak more directly to what you just said. I'm just listening to the best way to go. I feel like you said it well. And the only thing I want to add in this moment is I just want to reinforce the recognition of how externally attuned you may be, not you, but listener.
Right.
Especially when you're in the business, because it makes you feel like the external, the website, or like when I train vibrational upgrade practitioners, which is again, the system that I created, and they're starting their first side gig or business for the first time, almost everybody goes immediately to a logo.
Right. Yeah. To the,
dude, I've changed my logo 3 times.
Yeah. It's not, it's almost, I want to call it a material thing, but it's not.
Yes.
But it is that thing, that signifies your business. Like you said, the logo, the website, all of it. And I am a marketing person. I happen to think those things are very important.
Of course
but they have to tie in.
They have to be in a flow.
Right.
Like my signature program is magic, manifestation, and money flow. And the reason why it's that is because when you align yourself, when you do the certain clearings, and then the activations that get you more in tune with what is actually in your flow, then you can manifest as if by magic, along the lines of like what I was talking about earlier. We open up your field, you become more receptive, possibilities and opportunities come in more easily, so you're not forcing and making things happen as much. So I just feel like, again, let's talk about like how you can do that, because the understanding that people have is, like I've got to register as an LLC immediately, and I've got to get that logo going. And no, I mean, you've got to understand what you really want to be doing. Because nowadays, and let me back up for a second. In 2011, I was back for a year. I was already doing media interviews, et cetera. And Voice America approached me and asked me to have a radio show for 2.5, which I ended up doing for 2.5 years. But they approached me about a topic I wasn't talking about at all in my business and any of my interviews or public facing stuff. It was the Mayan galactic alignment of December 21st, 2012. So I was like, okay. Now I had been, where I told them to give me 48 hours so I could think about it, because I had been taking clients privately to retreats. I'm on the west coast of Florida, just a hop, skip, and a jump over the Gulf of Mexico down to the Yucatan, where my ruins are. So I had been taking clients there on private VIP retreats, but it was word of mouth only. Nobody knew that. So I found it interesting that they reached out to me with this topic. I nonetheless felt intuitively it was a really strong yes. I said yes, and I had that show weekly for 2.5 years and interviewed a bunch of experts about what that was meaning, the December 21st, 2012 alignment, to the point that I got hired or asked, I didn't apply, I just got asked to be a speaker and the meditation and yoga teacher and energy medicine professional on a cruise from Florida to Chichen Itza, the main Mayan ruin in the Yucatan, on the day of December 21st, 2012. I had just been there the year before with a client, and I had my feet without shoes on, and the ground was fine, like nothing riveting was happening the year before. But on December 21st, 2012, we all had to dress in white. We got special permission to be with the Mayan shaman at Chichen Itza. He did a special ceremony. TV crews were there. I was seen around the world as far away that I know of as Poland. I had a friend or a client over there in Poland, and she reported it to me. It was a big deal. And the ground was really electrically charged. I could feel it coming up through my feet. So what I learned about December 21st, 2012 is it's a 20-year period. So 2012 to 2032. That is about the 26,000 year era that the Mayans saw was ending on that day. And a new era was beginning. But all the hype that was around it, people were like, end of the world crap, but excuse my language. But then I learned that in the yogic culture, Yogi Bhajan talked about, there's a thing called yugas, which is Sanskrit for era. And so 2012 was the ending of one era in the yogic understanding, and the beginning of a new one. If you listen to professional astrologers, which I have a few on my show, that was 2012, the ending of the Piscean era and the beginning of the Aquarian era. So my understanding, let me fast forward. In 2019, I took a client on a VIP trip to Teotihuacan, which are Mayan Aztecian ruins outside of Mexico City. And we hired a guide, and I asked a local guide, and I asked him, okay, so here we are 7 years into it. What do you know about the two eras? And he said, well, the old era was one of destruction, and the new one is of construction. So what I have been seeing is people coming into my business since now, obviously I dropped the classroom teaching, and I have created a, multiple 6-figure business. I'm the CEO of blah, blah, blah of this business, and I'm in my 12th year of it. So yes, marketing is important. However, the balance between the material and spiritual is part of what's rebalancing in this 20-year window. So the first 10 years were really about cleansing and purging that which is out of alignment. Let me get more specific. I would have a lot of people come into me, like around 2013, come into my business and ask to work with me, who were having like tinnitus or skin allergies, or all of a sudden food allergies,
Right.
or like, so the changes in laundry detergent for sensitive skin, or skincare products for sensitive skin. All of this sensitivity, in air quotes, is about the nickname for this 20-year window, which is humanity's spiritual awakening times. So people were awakening, but they weren't understanding the tools with which to work with the consciousness that had gotten awakened. Even the Wall Street Journal this past year has had the full moon on its front page one day. So I wrote I think it's in my 3rd book, I go into it, Reasonable Dragons, that's on Audible. NASA has been having these, I think it was in 2015, the star that hadn't been seen in the sky since 500 years ago. So NASA's been trying, it was a revolutionary event that happened, i.e. Jesus was born. And so that Star of Bethlehem configuration happened around 2015 again, and it has happened from 2012 till now, over and over and over again, with these alignments that you can check it out on NASA's website, have happened when there's been like a massive event in history that's happened. The same alignment has been happening there is a special time we're in right now. And it's why you see before COVID, the increase in meditation apps and yoga studios, because people are spiritual awakening, but no one's really understanding that that's what's happening. So it's also hence the use of people saying, be your authentic self, which means tune in to where you connect to spirit. The Chinese culture, the yogic culture, both believe that the spirit resides in the heart. So when you're uplifted about something, when you're excited about something, that's guidance, that's your intuition. It doesn't only occur in this way where it's like this, you know, riveting, weird image, you know, that you see, and that has to be intuition. Intuition is as simple as what lights you up. And so I find that helping people discern the difference between their ego mind, the thoughts that you hear every day, where your mind's on robotic mode.
Right. Make more money, do the work.
That keeps you scurrying busy on the
The
surface.
hamster on the wheel, right?
You're not, so that you're so busy, you're so attuned to the external, you're not paying attention much to the internal. So what I've seen during this time too, Deb and listeners, that's really interesting is if people don't start on their own to proactively tune in more inwardly, they end up coming to me with multiple crises happening in their lives. So it's a diagnosis of some health scare, it's the business or job feeling, it's the marriage feeling, separation, it's the death of a loved one. So what I've seen that has caused me since about 2016 to say out to the public, if you're addicted to the struggle paradigm, I'm not the right mentor for you, because I'm all about the human potential.
Right.
And I was into the human potential movement since moving to San Francisco and going to all these used bookstores and finding out the focus on human potential, answering my question I had asked in psychology as a psych major that made me leave it. How do we be the happiest, most thriving versions of ourselves? So if we don't start paying more attention to the internal, it seems like there is something that happens in our lives to force us to. And whether that's one crisis or multiple crises, that crushes the everyday or crashes in on the everyday habitual robotic thinking from the personality level. We call it the ego mind in meditation, in Buddhism, because it's the part of your mind that has the thoughts that are connected to your personality level self. And when we're going about our day to day, the stats are around 85% of where we're making our choices from on a daily basis comes from the thoughts we don't even hear, what I call the back of the house consciousness. So we're only consciously creating our life with 10 to 15% of what is in our consciousness. So my gig with Vibrational Upgrade System is to clear out the back of the house consciousness using energy medicine to flush that consciousness to the frontal lobe or the prefrontal cortex, so it becomes accessible consciousness with which you have the ability to then make more what I call applied mindfulness, make more mindful choices that are new, because we are meant to be constructing or creating the new era. And that means people, so COVID is an example. When it started, people were asking me to pontificate about it. I'm like, you guys have been talking about this since 2011. You know, since I started my radio show, we're in a cleansing period, and apparently not enough of us have done it. So we have had COVID last a lot longer than it necessarily would have, to force people to go inside. So it's almost like a forced awakening. But then you said what you said about at the end of COVID, we have this mass migration. I was seeing it in like 2015, 2016, Shark Tank getting more popular, more people these were the first commercials for like LegalZoom, or the first commercials for
how to do it yourself type of thing.
Yeah, because more people were leaving the corporate gig, and I was already working with people, helping them do that in my Magic Manifestation and Money Flow program. Like I have this really fun example that I think will, and then I'll stop it so we can chat a little bit more. In my Magic Manifestation and Money Flow program, here's an example. A woman came in, she wanted to start her own business as an accountant. So this is back like around 2016. And was a single mom with this teenage daughter. And she was already working in a corporate accounting firm. So in week 4, so the first 6 weeks of Magic Manifestation and Money Flow, I'm doing certain procedures via videos and then on live calls to open up people's fields so that they can call new possibilities into them that are aligned, that are something that's going to make their heart sing with delight. So week 4, she posts in the private Facebook group for this program, Alison, on LinkedIn, 4 recruiters reached out to me, unsolicited by me, offering me corporate accounting jobs.
Mhm.
Now, that's what I want to leave so I can start my own business.
Mhm.
What do you get? So I tuned in. I have a nickname Hawkeyes because of my intuition.
Mhm.
It's unbelievably, fantastically reliable. I live by it. Just like at 19 and 20, there were
Mhm.
like 3 different times at most that I didn't
Mhm.
listen to my intuition, and I saw the chaos
Mhm.
that I created by
Mhm.
making a choice against what my guidance
Mhm.
was.
Mhm.
So I learned early on, don't do that. Listen
Mhm.
to that. It's more
Mhm.
helpful. So I tuned in. I spent years cultivating it, by the
Mhm.
way, to make it to this point, taking the natural gifts I had intuitively. And so I tuned in and I said, okay, respond to number 2 and number 4. I said, list the 4.
Mhm.
She did. I said, okay. I tuned in, respond to number 2 and number 4. She did. And ultimately she got hired by a company that let her work from home
Mhm.
so that she could be around raising her teenage daughter more with like a third raise, at least a third.
Mhm.
30% raise. And so it was exactly what would make her heart sing and ease up her life, but not what her mind had
Mhm.
decided, this
Mhm.
is what I need and this is what I want.
Mhm.
So when we yield to a bigger knowing
Mhm.
beyond what our mind can
Mhm.
construe, because our mind, I taught this in psych, AP Psych, Psych 101, Global Psych. It's 2 different chapters, perception and sensation, in the psych intro text,
Mhm.
because our 5 physical senses will take some stimulation from the physical
Mhm.
environment. And then the sensation part is it goes into our data file based on what we've already experienced in our lives to come up with the label of that sensation coming into our 5 senses.
Mhm.
And if we don't, so if I'm an Asian, I'm in a fruit market and I see a piece of fruit that's exotic to me,
Mhm.
my mind, through my visual sense, doesn't
Mhm.
know how to categorize and label
Right.
that.
Mhm. What do I do with it?
Right. So it
Mhm.
goes, okay, similar to what you know, looks like a pear.
Mhm.
Okay, and you're in Asia, let's call it an Asian pear.
Yeah.
So we can't get to the new when we
Mhm.
go based on the mind,
Mhm.
because that is not the right tool.
Mhm.
Allowing in that higher force that is a combination in the yogic understanding of our higher self, the
Mhm.
higher version of us, that then above our head in the chakra system, and every yoga posture in yoga is created to open chakras.
Mhm.
We don't hear that a lot in all the yoga studios. In the 8 limbs of yoga, only 1 is about the body postures. 5 of them are about working with the mind and our
Mhm.
consciousness.
Mhm.
So we got a little bit backwards here in the West. So when we are working on ourselves and playing in this, it's not just work. We
Mhm.
open up to our higher self, then higher up, connected to
Mhm.
something bigger than us, even the
Mhm.
divine, you could say, or the universe, however you construe it. But allowing in something that has the non-myopic viewpoint and can see bigger and is tuned
Mhm.
into the genuine part of ourselves that
Mhm.
is eternal. I don't mean to talk so deep because it isn't that deep of a process. It just takes a while
Mhm.
to get
Mhm.
readjusted to not
Right.
living from what your mind already
Mhm.
knows to
Mhm.
opening up to the new. It has a better idea than our mind could ever come up with. And that
Mhm.
client is happy and thriving.
Mhm. Right. And I love all this. This is just fascinating. Because we have been brought up with these certain thoughts, whatever, from when we were little, right? We were told, you're a little girl, you should do X. And you're a little boy, you should do X, and which is now just going very topsy-turvy and really throwing a lot of people off, right? They're like, it's
But
like,
that's part of what's rebalancing.
right. Yeah. And my thought process is, so I mean, but yeah, when and then we go to school, and a lot of what we're told, I think you and I are fairly close to the same age. Yeah, it's girls don't do math, girls don't do science, girls have to do the fluffy stuff.
I
And
rocked at math and science.
yeah, it was, and I was telling somebody this the other day. I'm from Colorado, and I went to this very small school in the mountains,
Oh boy.
and it was the only school in the county, so it was everybody that was there.
Oh wow.
And when we were freshmen, probably in high school, and this was a long time ago, we had you had shop class that the boys took, and you had home ec
Oh
class
man.
that the girls took, right? And we had a couple girls that went, I want to
Uh-huh.
take shop. And we had boys who went, they cook over there. And so our school actually was open enough, even, 40, however many years ago, to say, okay, they didn't make the girls not take shop, and they didn't tell the boys they couldn't take home ec. But yeah, we're raised with these expectations, and I don't care if it's, the Hallmark movie of the week, or the news, or your parents, or your sibling, spouse, friends, all of those. You're told you need to do this. You need to go down this pathway. And then when we start questioning that, my guess, total guess on all of this, is that what stops us is fear. We're just so afraid of what could happen that we stay on that little path. Am I right? Am I off?
You're not off, but I want to add to what you said. If you then take all that conditioning, and that's what we can talk about, that leads to what's being termed nowadays recently as unconscious bias. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more that hangs out in our unconscious and subconscious than just that. But if we were to then apply what you just said to the business world, and the amount of things we're told, you even say it on your podcast website, the amount of things we're told about this is how you do business.
Oh, it's just overwhelming.
And then you add on your industry, and this is how we do things in your industry. And then we add on the economy, and this is what the economy is doing now. And so therefore I must do this in order to get clients. And therefore I must do this in order to make money. And therefore I must do this as a person in this industry. You're left with no space to actually consider what would work for you. So I remember when I first was starting to send out emails with my email marketing system, I heard, okay, Monday is known as the day to send out your emails. Does that work for you? No, Alison, it doesn't. In fact, Sunday is a better day for me. And I can't.
No, you can't do business on Sunday.
And I have the biggest open rate on Sundays. So by listening to what works for you, that is creating that alignment. So there's a stronger energetic component behind what you offer. People are inundated, every single one of us, in those bloody email inboxes, right? So you do what you have to do as a business owner, but then when it comes to the promotions or the other email inboxes, what do you look at? But what grabs your attention? What grabs your attention? But somebody who has an aligned, passionate energy that's calling to you, right? So if you're awake when you're checking your emails, and you don't check every single email. I mean, I have 58,000 in my inbox. My brother exclaimed the other day when I was showing pictures on his TV over Thanksgiving. So what I'm getting at is the energy behind you being aligned is so much stronger than you just adhering in that robotic mode to what I'm supposed to be doing. And you will have more success more easily.
Right. And I think as bad as COVID was, and still is, I mean, it really did force a lot of these decisions to happen. Especially when all of a sudden you weren't in your office. Now, I've home office for 20 years, so it didn't make any difference to me. But for all of the people who were used to trotting themselves out to their car, getting in their car, making that nasty commute. I live in Atlanta. That commute is horrible. And sitting in that office with everybody around you, getting in your car, coming home. I mean, now some people, and they are comforted by those rituals. That is, and that's fine for them. But then when all of a sudden you didn't have that, and you had the chance to really think, what is it that I want to be doing? A big part of it was I still want to work for whoever I'm working for. I just want to do it from home. I want to have that flexibility. I work better at 11 o'clock at night than at 7 o'clock in the morning. And the businesses that went okie dokie, were of course the businesses that will thrive through this. Those that absolutely had to have that structure. And there are some that, the structure is kind of built in. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the ones that you really could say, you know what, Alison, if you work better at 11 o'clock at night, work better at 11 o'clock at night. We just care that you get the work done. Those are the companies that are now going, okay, this is working. And we're really seeing the pushback when businesses have said, nope, you got to come back in, when you're whatever. I mean, it's right. Amazon tried it and people went, no, we're going to quit.
Yep.
I don't know what's going on with Twitter. I don't think, I don't,
Let's just leave Twitter to the side.
I know, it's just, but one of the things that they said there was you're going to come back in, and people said no. We liked not being under somebody's thumb. And I think that's a
choice.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, I always felt worse during that, in kind of a humorous way, for the micromanagers who all of a sudden didn't have their employees where they could literally reach out and touch them, right? They couldn't walk up and see what was on their computer screen. And I think any of us who have been in an office setting, whether it's 10 people or, however many, we had managers like that, right? Who wanted to come up and look over your shoulder. Were you messing around? Were you not doing what you're supposed to be doing on company time? Those poor little people, their heads went, but we liked not having that. And I think what has happened is in most cases, productivity has gone up because when when companies, managers, whoever said, we trust you, you have that freedom. As long as you get the work done, that's really all we care about. And I think that's part of that is we're just feeding into this. I don't want those rules and those boundaries.
Let me talk about this, because this is part of what's rebalancing, where there's been hierarchy, right? Where there's also been abuse of power.
Right.
Where there's also been an imbalance with the masculine and the feminine. And I don't mean genders, I mean within us.
Right.
The yin
because
yang.
we have both.
Yes. So action is outward action, masculine, inward listening, intuitive, listening is feminine. So balancing those two is the way to move forward now. And so the protests in the streets of Moscow or Chile that we've been seeing, protests that don't typically happen in countries have been happening because the voices are getting heard. There's that restructuring that's happening where it's a sense of everything's evening out in this rebalancing time of this 20-year window, 2012 to 2032. And by 2032, we will have made new choices that are creating a more unified. I go into this a lot in my third book, Reasonable Dragons. There's more unity. And I know it's almost impossible to see when you look at our houses of Congress and our Senate, not just here, but that polarity. It's actually when we bodies have a fever, it needs to peak before it breaks.
Right.
So a lot of the time in natural healing and the natural course of things, it has to get more intense before it clears. And so what I hear you saying about COVID, I was in tears, and I don't cry easily or frequently. It's not that I'm blocked. I release enough without needing to cry.
Right. You don't need to.
But I remember my first, public event and talking when COVID first, because I have a client still over in Manila, and she had a friend in Hong Kong who got COVID. And then I had a client in Germany who got COVID. And so I was tracing its process or its marching procession over to the West.
Yeah, you were waiting for it.
Yeah, but when it blew up in the United States, in New York, I had my first public event, and people again wanted me to pontificate about it. I said what I already told you guys, but then I was in tears because I was like, if we could be more proactive, we wouldn't need this. So I feel like we're seeing that too with global warming. And I'll tell you what, my lead, I have a sales team that they're vibrational upgrade practitioners, and they take the calls coming in to my business. I'm really close with both of them, but particularly one of them who lives right down the street. 2 years ago, before COVID, I had a heck of a time admitting that the average person coming in waited until things got so bad before they would do something. That was the impression she was getting. I speak, it's different. Like the types of people that I work with are people who are understanding the proactiveness is how you actually have an easier life. The reactiveness, keeping yourself busy on the surface of life. So you're just in reaction and you have no space to listen to yourself. That's I love to transition a person from that into how to have success, because I tend to work with leaders in whatever community they're in, doctors, attorneys, people who own their own businesses, a lot of them, people who want to start their own business and leave the corporate world. It's just, there's a lot of leaders I tend to work with, even other thought leaders that come in. Because I tend to be 10 years ahead of the curve. Like when it's wild. And I just said this for the first time on a podcast interview yesterday. I guess I'm starting to say this. I usually am about 10 years ahead of the curve. Like, I became a vegetarian in 93. And you look at it now.
Right.
So in my first book, What If There's Nothing Wrong? It's now starting to hit threshold. But what if we didn't need crisis to force us to grow?
Right. Why is it we have to have crisis before we make changes?
Because the ego mind, as you said, the ego mind, as we say it in meditation, is trained to react to the fear-based thoughts. What is not, one of the things that was the coolest aspect about being over in Asia was, as a already meditator and meditation teacher, seeing, like in the morning market, the monk in front of me in full robes, getting on her scooter with bags of veggies as I was just pulling up. And then being in Thailand and Bangkok and seeing a monk in monk robes on his cell phone with a cigarette. I was like, that happens? They can do that?
Yeah, I didn't think that's not permitted.
But it's for me. And then, like, I'm in a gas station filling up my scooter, and behind me is a monastery with a Guan Yin statue that's like about 7 stories high. The reminders for me were everywhere. Go within. Your power is within. But here we stay so focused on the external that we don't recognize where our actual power is. So we end up leaking our power and giving it away to somebody who says, this is your industry standard. This is what's going on in your body. This is what's going on in the economy. I'm not saying don't work with experts, right? Because we all have our zones. But what I am saying is this, going in within and getting more mindful about what other possibilities you could be choosing. And then, in the face of fear, because it is the natural thing that happens when we are facing the new, that physiological reaction in our belly is not just fear, it's also excitement. They are the exact same physiology in our bodies. So expecting the resistance in your fear-based thoughts and knowing to choose what you feel strongly guided to do anyway, in the face of those fearful thoughts, is what is needed now. And it doesn't mean that you're choosing to, like, buy an electric car even when you love a non-electric car. It doesn't mean all bad choices. It means, what would it be like if today were even better than yesterday? What would it be like if I was working with even more ideal clients today than I was last year? What would it be like if my profit margin increased this year by another 25%? So the less we live in statements of periods, I know this to be true, I know this to be right, and we live on questions instead, the universe hates a vacuum. Our consciousness,
it's going to fill it.
Yes, and our consciousness is reaching out, especially when we're cleaner and purer and a higher vibration. Our consciousness is leading. It's getting heard, and the answers will come in, the guidance will come in. So instead of like, this sucks, I have to go look at research online about how to increase my profit margin, ask the question when you're outside in nature, or in the morning when you're walking, or when it's a quieter time, shower, driving, not in traffic where you're frustrated. Hey, I wonder what it would take to increase my profit margin by 25%. And don't expect the answer to come in that moment. But give yourself more space in your daily life, like a little bit more time out in nature, a little bit more time where you're laying down, or a little bit more time where you're in the shower, or whatever is going to be quiet, create quietness around you, because that's when it can seep in. The answer, the guidance.
And we're so conditioned, I think, to look for the negatives. And I mentioned I'm a marketing person. And so in marketing, we're taught that we need to solve someone's pain.
You
And
got it.
I'm in this delightful mastermind group. I love it. I love my mastermind group. It's women, and some of the most powerful women I have ever talked with. I mean, I absolutely love them to pieces. So we were talking about this the other day, and I said, what if we said, as opposed to how can I solve someone's pain, how can I bring someone pleasure?
Mm-hmm.
And just that right there, because it is, in essence, it's the same thing, but it's very negative as opposed to very positive. If I'm solving your pain, I'm probably bringing you pleasure, but how can I bring pleasure as opposed to how can I solve your pain?
So I'm so with you on that. I spent years with one of my business coaches saying, push the pain points, emphasize the pain points.
Mm-hmm.
And I had come.
And you're looking for bad. I mean, that's the thing.
So let me talk about that, because negativity is contagious.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice it's like a Pac-Man in your own head. Like
Mm-hmm.
once you start thinking negatively, thought towards somebody, it's easier for it to build. Mm-hmm. So I am all about creating a new momentum. Mm-hmm. Now, if we first get to the energy, it makes you have a new neurological pathway carved out for the thoughts to then go down. If we don't work with that back of the house consciousness through energy clearings and activations, then you're more likely to get pulled down that same thought pattern. So if you're not working in these subtle energies, then you're going to take a lot longer to change. And fear is, when you're living from the mind, fear is really powerful. So for me, my experience was in the first 6 years of my business, I was like, I will not market fear-based marketing. I will not talk about the problem. I will only offer possibilities and solutions. And that, my business coach, after a couple of years, said to me, okay, so why don't we so she started to use this term, inspirational marketing. I'm like, that's what I've been doing all these years. So nonetheless, knowing from Chi Gong and yoga practice and teaching, I'm going to lean into my resistance. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the problem, and I'm going to focus on it. I'm going to push the pain points. Do you know what happened? I got more victims of a lower nature than I would want to work with, non-ideal clients. So I stopped doing it. So again, this is an example of me being about 10 years ahead of the curve, because I'm like carving new pathways societally. Like, I know that might sound like I have delusions of grandeur, but genuinely observing my life, it's what happens. So the fear thinking, when you're hesitant in making a choice, it doesn't have to be a perfect choice, because part of creating is choosing. And I don't mean macrame. Creativity, it comes from your choices. You're creating your life every day with your choices. So why not have more of a range to see the possible choices, rather than the peripheral that that everybody's basically living with until they do this kind of opening work. So when you make a choice, it doesn't have to be so serious. It doesn't have to be approached with, I don't want to make the wrong choice, so let me make no choice. Because taking no choice
is the wrong choice.
Well, it also is a choice.
Right.
So it's not like, there's also the thing around decisions, and I have to make the right decision. We're using these as synonyms, decisions and choices. Just develop your choice musculature. Make a choice, observe the outcome. Obviously not to hurt anybody, but make a choice and observe the outcome. Is it leading to what you're desiring? And make that same kind of choice more. If it's not, then don't. So it's like this big emphasis that's been put around decisions and choices. There's a chakra related to this. And most people talk about, I know I'm getting a little bit off, and people might have.
Oh no, I'm fascinated. So
a chakra program. A chakra means wheel in Sanskrit. And because we have 7 main ones, and they run down along our spinal column, and they're the intersection of the mind, the body, and the spirit. So I can go in through a chakra, and I can access all different levels of your mind, or the consciousness, sub, un, and conscious mind. I can also access your spirit. So that indicates some stuff that's happened maybe before this incarnation that got saved in your cellular memory. And then, yes, it does require belief in reincarnation. And just stay tuned in, you guys. Just dismiss that if you don't. And then the third one is the body. So every chakra is by one of the major glands of the endocrine system, or the hormonal system. And that's our chemical communicating system. The chakra columns down the central nervous system, down the spine. So it's and two of the main glands, pineal and pituitary, which are the command centers over the central nervous system, are connected to a chakra. So the chakras govern our communication systems. So let's say your throat chakra is closed down. Not in a lot of people who are just beginning with the chakras think that's all about communication. It's not.
That was going to be my guess. Was it's your voice?
It is, but that's just what I call it. Have been since about 2016. This is in my second book, Vibrational Upgrade: Conspiracy for Your Bliss. I started to see a lot of my clients, most of them, need some kind of reconnection I had yet to do ever before between the heart and the throat chakra. So I asked my guidance one time in meditation or under the night sky, I don't know when, hey, what is this? I got that it's co-creators channel, because we were stepping into more of the construction time, right? And we needed our ability to make choices that are connected to the heart. So strengthened. So if somebody, so I consider this the second power center of the chakra column, just for these new times. So communication is the whole first level, but the second level is your courage sits here. Your if you feel like you have no choice in your life, you might have a chronically tight neck. You also, because the wheel, there's a bunch of different aspects to each chakra. They are shown symbolically as lotus petals, but those are actually different aspects. So another aspect of the throat chakra is the courage and choice, and creativity. So these are three different aspects, but they come together to help us have the courage to create our lives based on our choice. So this is all becoming more alive nowadays. However, the thyroid sits at the throat. That's the gland with the throat chakra. So if you feel like if you have little courage and you feel like you don't have much choice, and you're like, what is she talking about? I don't have the power to create my life. Everybody's creating it for me around me, or what everybody else says. Then this might affect your thyroid, because the wheel isn't turning the vital life force energy. So that vital life force energy isn't getting to the muscle.
It's all compressed.
It's down, yeah. And so we want the vital life force energy flowing down and all throughout our system as it is designed to do. And our consciousness connects with the chakra system, so that consciousness goes all throughout the body. But the way that we either block our consciousness or have it moving, so the way that we either block the life force energy or have it moving, depends on our thoughts. And especially the 80, I say it's 90% of the back of the house consciousness that is not awakened and is not able to be used for more mindfulness. If the more that I flush that towards the front, the more the whole body becomes unblocked, the better your health is physically. So there's this, how do I be the happiest, most thriving version of myself? There's a big chunk of it, that what I just talked about.
Well, oh my gosh. We've done this for an hour. Can you believe this? And I mean, we've obviously just scratched the surface on this, because I was sitting here thinking, well, yeah, but so what it means is we just have to have you on again. But for people who are thinking, okay, I need to talk to Dr. Kay, how do they reach you, and what are the services that you provide?
Vibrationalupgrade.com, or my name, Alison with one L, middle initial J, KAY.com. That's what you need on Amazon to get my books. Third one, Reasonable Dragons, is on Audible. That's a really great intro, that book. That's why it's the one that's on Audible. And then on YouTube. So on my website, if you're interested in what I was just talking about, go to, I think it's under products, go to the chakra series. And there's a list of the typical aspects that can get blocked for that chakra. So you can self-assess yourself. And then there's sample clearings and activations underneath each. If you want to work with me directly, I don't do a lot of one-on-one work anymore, because my signature program, Magic Manifestation and Money Flow, is so robust in how much I can get to in your entire life. Because of the classroom teacher background, you don't ever feel lost in the group. I don't let that happen. But I do still do one-on-ones or VIP intensives for people who really are either used to the red carpet treatment like myself, or there's like an urgent health issue. I'm not doing a lot anymore with health, just because if we let it go to the point of health, it's heavy, it's hard, it takes longer. If we catch stuff in the emotion, the mental body, it's easier to undo with the subtle energies. I mean, I've successfully wiped a brain tumor out of somebody's head. I've contained tumors in the colon so that the person just went in, got it cut out, didn't need any morphine, went home and shocked the doctors and nurses repeatedly. Just one client. So yeah, I mean, I'm open to serve. And so depending on what you need, I would recommend looking at the programs page under the Work With Me tab. And I'm going to say something that's going to sound kind of funny. I know that a lot of people, when they get introduced, they want to do the low budget thing to start with. I wouldn't get into Activate Your Magic. I would go right into Magic Manifestation and Money Flow. My first tier program is Activate Your Magic. But if you're already feeling the yes, just go into Magic.
Right. You've done that part already almost.
Yeah, you don't need it. You're wasting time if you're trying to make like the cautious choice. I challenge all of you listeners, what bold choice can you make today that would allow your life to catapult forward as we're heading into 2023, because 2023 is going to be a massively creative year.
I know, it's going to be so much fun. So much fun. Well, oh my gosh, Dr. Kay, this really has just been incredible. I can't wait to delve more into your website and the books and things like that. So that's going to be great. The one thing, since I'm not driving as much anymore, that's when I used to listen to books. I'm like, we will have you on again because I think this is great information for everyone. But until then, do you have any final thoughts for everyone that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, here's something. Hold on a sec. So this is a little siren that I use. And what I'm suggesting by that is just be more observant of your thoughts. And I mean, I'm saying something that takes a while to develop, right? And I have the tools and I help people do this. But if you want just instructions, see how much you can get the ability going to notice what your thoughts are. And when it's a destructive thought instead of a creative thought, apply something from Tibetan Buddhism and Western cognitive behavioral therapy and redirect it and what I'm now suggesting is ask it a question. What if there's nothing wrong? Which is the redirect. So we'll just leave it there.
I love it. I love it. Well, I can't wait until we chat again. I'm Deb Creer. I know, isn't this fun? I'm going to have so much fun when we have her on again. But I'm Deb Creer. We've been talking with Dr. Alison J. Kay. And until next time, everyone have an absolutely fabulous day.
Blessings. Bye.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.